Hello and welcome to the Learning and Design Mastermind podcast, which connects the worlds of instruction design and many topics in instruction technology. I am Daisy Barreto. I am your host, and with me is my co-host is someplace here on the screen, Sherry Conklin, and I am happy to be your guide as we explore these topics. In each episode, we will explore the latest trends, case studies, and practical tips from professionals in the field that can help you deliver exceptional learning experience. And with us today is Holly King, an MIT alumnus. And Holly, could you please tell us more about your position that you're currently working and what you do?
Yeah, hi, I am Holly King. I am so honored to be here today with two of my favorite instructors from my time at UNC Wilmington. Fun fact, I'm also a UNC Wilmington parent. So I have a child who's a student there as well. So Wilmington is has a very beautiful place in my heart. My role is I am a director of technology or chief technology officer, which is it's called in some districts, for a northeastern district here in North Carolina. Prior to that, I was an instructional technology specialist, and before that, I spent 20 years in the classroom as a science teacher.
Thank you, Holly. And I think, so my first question for you is going to be related to a previous conversation that we had when we met at NC Ties, and then we were just talking about the buzzword that everybody is talking about, like AI. And so, Holly, can you tell us more? How do you see AI tools being used in K-12?
So I think the question that I would instead ask is, how can we not use it in K-12? And what we're seeing in nearly every industry, nearly every profession, every career has an element of AI embedded in it, whether if it's just a small nuance of that career or whether it is front forward in terms of the use of that career. And so we're finding that if students don't have a skill set to really efficiently and effectively harness the power of AI, they're going to be behind the curve in terms of when compared to the people that they're competing in the job field with when they start to enter industry. And so it's teaching them how, I think the power is in teaching the students how to use it and changing the mindset of what it is. And so we have a lot of barriers that I think we have to come over with AI, but it's we absolutely have to use it, and we need to start using it with even students younger than seniors in high school.
Thank you for that input. And I think and I like when you mention, the need for the field. And one of the things, even in our podcast, that we have been hearing here is that how people are already using in their career, right? And so there is going to be this expectation that as people graduate, from high school or even from college, that they need to have that skill set. And I think that's really important to start teaching them how to do it. I like how you said, effectively, or efficiently. And then also I think one of the powers in education too is like to help them to do it ethically too, how they use it, AI in that ethical manners. And my follow-up question for you would be, can you give an example of how AI has already been successfully integrated in your curriculum? This could be in your experience, like what have you seen, just given it as an example.
So we have a couple of ways that we are using it here in the county where I serve. One, we are heavily using it with our leadership teams. And so I have the opportunity to work with our building leadership teams and our district leadership teams to both teach them how to use it, but also model how we're using it. The biggest hurdle is teaching individuals that it's not a search engine. There's a lot of individuals who will use an AI bot as a one and done. I'm going to craft a prompt, and then what it gives me is, well, I don't really like it, and so they step away. And we're having to teach individuals how to use it as a conversation tool and a back and forth. And one of the really powerful ones that I've seen recently is the voice commands in some of the chat bots. And so, for example, use that ride home or use that ride to work or between buildings and have a conversation with the chatbot as you're planning something. And then when you're done, when you get to your destination, you have that entire thing transcribed for you. And so it can serve as a thought partner. It's not the destination. And so when we start opening those doors, we're really starting to expand the ways that our adults are using it in the space for things like planning professional learning, drafting an email. Some of our beginning teachers were utilizing it to help them draft maybe some challenging emails that they would need to send to a stakeholder. We're using it for planning purposes to plan an activity, how to draft a follow-up survey. All of those things are ways we're using it with adults. And I think as we open their minds to how they can use it professionally as a time saver and a thought partner, we're then opening the minds of how can I use it with students? A, in the same ways, but B's really innovative ways. An exciting way that we used it in elementary, and I love this story so much. We had an elementary teacher who had the students write a descriptive paragraph, which is very normal in your fourth and fifth grade classrooms. And then they put the descriptive paragraph in an image generator, and it generated what they had described. Well, the teacher at this point, if we had stopped the lesson at the end of the descriptive paragraph, then the teacher could have very easily given feedback that said, you did a great job, you met all the examples, A plus. But when the teacher then put this descriptive paragraph into the image generator, the student got feedback from the AI generator, that the image generator, that said that did not match what I wanted it to match in my brain at all, which the teacher does not have access to. The teacher had absolutely no idea what was in that student's brain. They could only see what was on paper. So then the student took it upon themselves to go back to that paragraph and edit, not because of the language lesson, but the content, that the teacher would have never been able to give that level of feedback. And so using AI as a feedback tool, an instantaneous feedback tool in a world where I think we do have more demands on teachers, more demands than ever. We have a variety of students that we're facing with a variety of needs. And so where we can offer places that are time savers, but also authentic, A, it saves time, but B, our kids are used to instantaneous responses. And C, it's really empowering them to go out, use a tool, get the feedback, and then they can become part of that like feedback cycle. So those are just a couple of places that I've seen it used really, really innovatively and well.
Thank you, Hal, for bringing this example. And I think like this example is really good because it talks about the notion of using, and I know that there is a lot of ways that people are talking about, like, using AI as a companion, as a collaborator, as as your helper in that sense. And I think like, you are providing a good example on how the students are already using that as the initial feedback process. That you're right, a teacher might not be able to give that instantaneous feedback, but if you have AI providing the initial, and then when it comes to the teacher, right, like they can provide further feedback. So it's almost like that that what I was even hearing today, like it's almost like you're having AI do the triage before coming into to actually do the final submission. And my next question for you, you answered that with this example, and then I'm going to go back to now touching basing on this notion of that many educators, one of their worry is that AI is going to replace them, so that we will not need any more humans to teach kids. So the AI is going to be teaching. And in your experience, how can AI be used to enhance rather than replace the role of the teachers? And then maybe even how you see that it's not being that replacement, right? Like, that there's still that need for teachers in this process.
You'll never replace the impact of human interaction, ever. And as an ed tech professional, I spend 50% of my time with devices and 50% of my time with humans. And even today, I am training individuals on how to use a platform that we just introduced. But there is something to be said about being in the space together, learning together, collaborating, asking questions. You're never going to replace voice, intonation, feeling, facial expressions. All of those parts are integral to the learning experience, whether it's with students or whether it's between adults. And so we can use AI for me, like, well, for example, as a tool. It's just another tool in the box. And so for you, you just mentioned it could be used for triage, great example. It can be used for polishing, but it's not going to generate the idea because the idea has to come from the crafted prompt. And so it requires, I'll go ahead and do the plug for literacy. Not only does it require the individual to communicate with it, then ultimately whatever's done with said idea when the prompt conversation is finished, it's still going to rely on adults and community in order to bring that to action. So I see it rather than replacing teachers. I see it as creating space to enhance communities in classrooms and schools. And the other big argument that I often see is literacy. Is what is it going to do to literacy with our students? I believe it has the potential to positively impact literacy. In order to communicate with the bot, you have to be literate. You have to be able to craft a prompt and then analyze what it gives you and then communicate back. Look at where those items are on the Bloom's taxonomy list. They're at the top. They're not low-level regurgitation. That's going to a search engine and just asking a question. That's low level. When you're truly interacting with AI, that's higher level, which is going to take, I think, literacy to a higher level in order to be able to use these tools most efficiently.
And I think like, you're bringing a very good point, especially because it's like, when you mentioned about like the literacy, and for some of us that have been using AI and then doing the whole the prompting back and forth, one of the things that we know is that you need to be precise. You really need to spell it out what you want AI to do. Otherwise, it won't give what you need. And then you might need to go through multiple iterations, to really get what you want. But what I'm hearing, like, what I see and I hear a lot of people say about the process is that the precision, being very clear, that clarity, of what you want the AI to do is very important.
And what a great skill for our young adults.
Yes.
Most of them have never been held to that standard. And here we have a bot that is holding them to that standard and teaching them because they're rewarded positively when the bot gives them what they want. And yet no teacher did that, but it's going to help them reach whatever their goal is.
Correct. And my next question to you, Holly, is like, one of the things like, even though like we are as technology people, we're always like, yay for the use of technology. I know that some schools and districts, they are very aware and sometimes even concerns like, how can we do this and how can we do this well, and how can we do this ethically? And I think that's going to be my next question for you. What ethical guidelines, should schools and districts follow, and even think about implementing with AI-based tools, not only for the teachers and staff, but also like, with the students as well.
So one of the things that we're working on right now, and I'm actually very proud of some of this work, is our Board of Education just voted in an updated technology policy, which includes AI. And I'm excited about it because it actually requires us as a district to offer professional learning for adults and students on the ethical use of the resources, responsible use. It also requires that we communicate with families on what that is and be very, very transparent about what tools we're allowing our students to use. So I'm excited that that expectation is in policy because now it is going to be part of our everyday. Um, we have invested in a platform that gives students an opportunity to play in AI with some guardrails, so to speak. We are using Magic School. We researched several, and so by using Magic School, that opens Magic Student, which gives the teachers some autonomy in allowing which elements of Magic School they wish the students to use, but then they also have visibility that gives the opportunity for teachers to really teach AI and how it can be used. It also helps with some craft prompting where or crafting appropriate prompts because it will do some of that for you. We're working with our adults on less templated, I guess, platforms where we are really, really working hard with how to craft a prompt. And then we are eventually going to release some of those platforms to our upper high school students so that they can harness a true chatbot as opposed to some of the ones that kind of pigeonhole you into templates that they already have. So I am very excited. We do have pushback though in the community. I would be a liar if I said that we thought everyone was fully embracing AI. And we do have some that are concerned with the cheating aspect that accompanies AI. And my argument to that is very similar to when the calculator entered math. People didn't want people to use the calculator because it was going to do the math for you. Well, the calculator is only good as what you put in it. And the same is true for AI. And it's a matter of teaching students what's ethical and what's responsible use. We're crafting some language that teachers can utilize in their syllabi so that we can not only be kind of front load that, but be positive and clear, but then also recognizing that I can only control what's in our internal environment, and I really can't control if a student has it on their phone. And I can't control what's at home. So in terms of from an equity perspective, if we're allowing students to learn the tools in the space, then we're maintaining that particular resource is available to all. And we're not setting up a situation where students have some advantages at home simply because of what's available to them.
No, that's such a great point that you brought it up, Holly, in so many ways, and I could go on about like asking a question here and there on each one of them, which I think they're so good. But one, especially because you mentioned magical school, and I think it is related to one of the questions that I had here for you, is that I went to a summit, where they were training teachers on magic school, and I think like one of the key things that CEO was mentioning is that magical school is one of the AI tools or platforms that they do not keep that data, like they don't keep that student data, which I think it is so important, and I think a lot of, because one of the things that people do have that fear is that data privacy, right? And so my question to you, I mean, you probably, that's the reason why you all are using Magic School, but with AI collecting vast amount of student data, what are some of the most critical data privacy issues, that educators should be considering, and policymakers too need to ensure that they address, or even tools that that you are all adopting in your school that people maybe should consider giving, if they are concerned with that data privacy.
So we are very lucky in North Carolina because at the state level, we have a lot of support when it comes to data privacy. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has given us very strong guidelines. And then I have access to our local legal team whenever we run into a situation where we have a questionable third-party vendor. So we as a district, I am very proud of this work. We have signed data privacy contracts with every single one of our vendors, and it's a little bit tighter than the one that the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction requires. And so I am proud that we've moved in that direction. With that becomes a conversation with teachers, because in order to request a software, they now have a formal request process, which includes a conversation about whether this vendor's their data privacy posture aligns with our needs. Are they willing to engage in this contract? And then what does their network look like that stores our student data? Is it a safe physical and digital space? And so slowly over the course of about 2 years, we've had the opportunity to engage in those conversations, which had never happened before. So we've primed that space. And now, when we have those data privacy conversations about AI and the data that you put in, data privacy is no longer a new concept because we've laid that groundwork. And now I think that they have a better understanding of it's okay for you to put your test scores into AI and look for a trend. It would not be okay to put your student names with those test scores. And so make sure that when you're putting your data in, that you're actually you're feeding the environment, the AI environment. So you would not want to put data in that someone that's going to become part of an algorithm later that people are using for their own searches. And so that, that kind of awareness happened, but I think it's a result of the kind of the change management that we've gone through in our data privacy expectations for any of our softwares.
Thank you, Holly, to just like bring all the information in, and then mentioning like what measures you're all taking, to ensure that these concerns that some people have, but it seems like that you're all on the pro end, and then making sure that you are being proactive instead of retroactive in those concerns. My
So
question,
I think
go ahead.
during COVID, ed tech was everywhere. That was how we had to learn how to do school, and we had to learn it really, really quickly. And so I think when that happened, there was a lot of resources that were available, whether they were free or whether they were very, very cost effective, or maybe we had funds that at the time that we no longer have available. And so with that ed tech explosion, that also opened up some gaps in terms of our vulnerabilities with student data. And so scaling that back, well, the budgets have been cut in some places, but also we've had some situations where student data has been compromised. So all of that, I think, has forced us to take a more critical look that we probably didn't do 4 years ago.
And then still, it's like, it's important to do that, right? Like, especially as you're saying, like, we should not wait until something happens, right? To do something about it. And I do think like now, and especially because like AI is just a matter of time, uh, you know, for it to become even more adopted than it is, as you kind of like mentioned, even the calculator, it is going to be one of those technologies that initially it is that explosion, but then it's going to be, part of like, maybe our daily tasks. And so people need to be prepared for when it comes. And then thinking like, what are the ways that we can protect our students, protect their data, in using these tools. And my next question for you would be like, how can K-12 educators be better trained, to understand and use AI tools in ways that can benefit their students, and then also because I know some educators they have been teaching for a long time, and then there's new technology and they have the fear, oh, I need to learn a new technology. So they don't feel like overwhelmed. It's like, oh, I have to teach my students there's this new technology. I need to learn to, I don't want to, or I'm a little scared what this can do. So if you can talk us a little bit more about like, what ways or better ways that we can train teachers or prepare them for for this new tool that is coming, like, and it's going to be, people are going to be using more often.
So I think there's three options. You're going to have your early adopters. You're going to have your teachers that are all in. And so my advice with those individuals is celebrate them. Move the things out of the way because they're running. Let them run. Then partner them with with the teachers that are jogging. Because those ones that are jogging is like they've got the momentum, and we just need to come up with ways to keep them motivated so that they will jog faster and then become runners. So celebrate those individuals in your schools and move the barriers out of the way that allow them to continue to grow, because those are going to be the ones that light the school on fire. You're also going to have your walkers. For your walkers, I think, and I'm using some of the terminology from, I think it's move the bus. For your walkers, those are going to be your adopters that are a little later. You need to entice them with something. So it could be something as simple as showing them how it can be used in their workflow. So maybe not their student workflow yet, but their workflow. How can it help them better meet the needs of students, better meet some of their professional obligations, save time? It might be something that they're using AI to help themselves out personally, like recipes and planning their exercise regimen. It doesn't have to be professional to get them hooked to see what the tool is. Or many of our EdTech platforms have an AI embedded in it. So it might be using an AI element in a resource that they already use to meet the needs of students to better enable them to use that resource, and then teaching them on the backside, well, this is actually an AI element. So let me show you some of the AI elements that are not embedded in another platform, maybe a standalone. So almost I'll call it the beach entry into the pool. So they're not jumping off the high dive, but they just need a little bit slower entry to acclimate to the water. They'll come on board. They may never become a full adopter, but I think that they will start to see some of the benefits, just like they have with digital calendars, just like they have with email, and just like they have with many of the apps on their phones.
Yes, and I do think, like, you bring good points. It's like, to really make sure that we train teachers well, we need to be where they are and then help them along this process, not just like, here you have it, and then do whatever you need to do with this too. So I think those are a good points that you are bringing it up. In terms of, like, policies or maybe frameworks that you may have seen being used, or may have, or maybe you are all adopting within your own school. What are some of the maybe highlights or key things that you think that we should be ensuring that AI in education is being used ethically and effectively in the classroom, right? Like, in what ways, and I don't know if it is like, these are maybe some of the few things that we are doing to ensure that both the ethically part and then the effectively part are being implemented in the classroom, well.
So I think it starts with your leadership teams at the building levels need an understanding of what it is and what it can do in the classroom. So it starts with conversations at the district level with building leadership. From there, with teachers, I think guidelines are important, but I don't, and I'm going to be kind of bold in this statement. I hesitate to put really strict AI policies in place, because what I find is that the technology just in 12 months is changing a lot faster than the policies can keep up with. And so, what I would love to see is policies that encourage education on it, encourage responsible and efficient use of the technology, but at the leadership of your superintendent and your district curriculum teams to define exactly what that looks like, because it's going to change based on the available technologies at the time. I do think that the education needs to include language that teachers can use in their syllabi and when they're communicating with families. I think there needs to be very clear guidelines, not policies, on whether the teacher has autonomy to define if AI can be used on an assignment or not. And that should be clearly stated in the expectations. I think we would expect that if my superintendent wanted me to do something, I would want him to say, I don't want you to use AI for this. And then you follow accordingly, because when you get into industry, you would have those parameters as well. And lastly, the education on AI, hang on, I'm losing the language. The softwares that can identify that AI is used and the limitations to those softwares, because that becomes the very next question that teachers have is, how do I know that a student has used AI? And the reality is you don't ever really know whether a student has used AI, because I mean, just as quickly as the tools are coming out to recognize AI, so are tools like humanizers that supposedly go back to the AI generated content and make it more human-like. Those tools are learning at a rapid pace, much faster than we can develop software to identify that it's been used. And so once all of those things are in place, I think that document should be a living document as guidance that you're constantly going back to with your team of educators, whoever is your representative team at the district level, and giving feedback, because if it's too stagnant, I think the technology is going to outgrow your guidelines.
That's I really like that you mentioned, the conversation, and then having a living document, because I do think, with these technologies and the rapid approach that they are coming, I think people need to be aware that these are conversations that is not one conversation we stop. It is a continuous conversation that we need to have. And that the document cannot be like, okay, here we've done this and then we're done, unless someone is prepared to have, like, version 1, version 2, version 3, version 5 and 6 and 7 of that document. That truly is what's going to happen with the nature of the things. And we only have one question left
Okay.
for you. And especially as we see, looking to the future, maybe what emerging AI technologies do you think will have maybe the most significant impact on K-12 in the next years, or at least, like, the trend that you're seeing in the K-12 schools that people are using is like this might be it. But
I think AI has the potential to revolutionize education. Like I think that education has sat in a space. I don't think education, unfortunately, looks a whole lot different in some classrooms than it did 40 years ago. I think AI has the potential to really flip it, and I'm excited about that. I think it has the potential to be the greatest equalizer, because when I think about what it can do for translation, I just met with a teacher yesterday, and we were talking about how to use an AI tool. It's a Google tool, but use the Google tool that's an AI generator to translate a written document into a podcast. So think about that. Now the students who will have access to that content that maybe would not have had access to it in a written form, not because they can't read and write, but it's just not their preferred communication method, or for a number of reasons. And so when we talk about the differentiation elements, when we talk about translations, when we talk about accessibility, I think it has the potential to have the biggest impact of anything in education that we've seen since probably the calculator.
wow, thank you, Holly. I do think, like, everything that you said and shared with us today really, I mean, I feel energized. I hope, like, whoever is
I love my
what?
job.
Yes. No, but I mean, it's good. Like, when you like your job, like, you do um you exude that, right? Like, I feel like, that's that energy, and then how you see the future. I am embracing right now, and I hope, like, the people that are watching this can also feel the same way, right? Because I know some people may have that feeling of, oh, AI is gonna, destroy education. But like you, I do think that we need to see also the potential, not be like, the just seeing the gloom side, because we're still seeing people using to educate them. I mean, like, educate themselves and use for a purpose, and using effectively and ethically too. So I think it's a matter of us being prepared to use
Mhm.
the tool, and being prepared well to when problems come, because problems will come, and it have come with any technology. This is not the only one, but it has come with other technology that we
Our
just can
language
prepare.
is what we're using is we want to build informationally literate graduates. And so in that umbrella is AI. That's where it lands. So it's bigger. It's bigger than AI. It's all encompassing. And as I think about right now, we're in the middle of a political election, like the ability to be informationally literate, what you see on the news, on the internet, in your Google searches, is we need to build graduates that can look at that information and discern whether that's truth and be able to find appropriate resources that, yes, that's true, or no, that's been generated by someone and that's not true. And so I think that we have a responsibility to build graduates who are informationally literate and to model that as adults in the space.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I do appreciate you coming here and then sharing all that you're seeing, all that you're working in, in your district, and then and also with the teachers that you are working with, and then all the great things that you're doing there to ensure that you are really developing future students, like, or not future, but students that are literate in using. It is not, as I said, it's not just AI, but any tech knowledge and any content that they need to be able to be having that discernment to see things, and knowing, discerning what is accurate and not. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here with us. And for those that are watching this, thank you so much. And I hope like you come back and see more of our podcasts here. So thank you, Holly.
Thank you. It's been such an honor.